Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. This is live classroom for module number 3, and we're going to talk a little bit about 3D animation as well as a couple other techniques to help you complete the assignments for this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at the content. Okay, and we are in module 3, and here's what we're going to be covering today. So we are going to be using camera layers. Basically, we're just going to be adding another layer into the timeline as a camera, and then we're going to manipulate different camera layer properties to create kind of a 3D panning motion effect. And then we'll determine the best visual representation or representation for content. Talk a little bit about your infographic animation coming up as well. Working in 3D space, pretty straightforward. We're just going to use some of the 3D toggles in the timeline to do that. Cameras, basically, you're going to be adding a camera layer, just like if you would import an element or a picture or sound. Also, we're going to animate cameras so we can keyframe cameras as well. We'll also be adding lights, which is another way to add uh, emphasis in your compositions, and we'll take a look at that. And then emphasizing data in your animation, because we really do want to use data points in our animations. Very important, okay? Data points in your animation is going to create less text and more engaging graphics, okay? All right, so, and then you're going to be creating a logo animation in 3D space. I'll show you an example of that. And then still to motion, you're going to have some elements to given to you to animate. I'll talk about that. And of course, this is the live classroom, okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the 3D space in After Effects, because it's pretty straightforward, because you do have a 3D switch. It's the little cube here. And when we use that, we can add another axis, okay? So before it was just X and Y, right? Up and down, side to side. With this, we can actually create an X, Y, and Z axis so we can move things a bit more three-dimensionally, okay? So here you can kind of see a really good representation about how that works. Now, this is just a flat graphic, so it's really not going to have any thickness, but it will appear kind of like it is in 3D space, okay? And then there's a LinkedIn learning on how to use 3D layers. And best way to think about it is think about like if you have a shape here in text and it's solid, we want to use different layers to create more depth in our animations. So using 3D toggles is a great way to do that. And there's a great video here that compares 2D and 3D. You'll see that there's a big difference between animating in 2D space and animating in 3D, okay? And they'll talk about 3D space and keyframing in 3D, which is very similar to what we do in 2D space. We're just going to be using the same keyframes. You can also use expressions there as well. Okay. And then camera layers is very similar to adding um, adding an element. Basically, you're just going to layer new camera, and then you have uh, positions and transforms for those cameras as well. Once you add it, you will have X, Y, and Z tracking for the camera. So not only can you animate an element in 3D space, you can animate the camera. So you can get orbits, you can get pans, you could get lots of different camera movements, as well as you can manipulate your object in 3D space as well, which could lead to some really nice, very layered and interactive animations. Okay. And then you'll have uh, using the camera with the active camera and also keyframing here on LinkedIn. Okay. And I'm recording this a little bit early because I ended up having a meeting at 3 o'clock. So I'm going to try to get done with this about before 3 o'clock. So, and then when animating camera layers, basically it's going to be the same as using keyframes, transforms, which is, position, rotation, that kind of thing. Let's just take a look at an example here. That's going to be a pan or a zoom out, okay? Or we're dollying the camera back, and that's just position in 3D space, okay, which is a nice effect, okay? And this is a panning shot, so basically it's like you have a camera on a track and it's just gonna, or on a tripod, and you're just gonna pan around that tripod, okay? And again, some more animations on animating a 3D camera there. Um, so whenever we add a camera, we have a lot more versatility on movement, okay? And then we can also add lights, which is the same thing as adding an element. We're just going to create a new light layer. And we have different types of lights. We have parallel lights that are in direction, infinite distance to the object, similar to the sun, so it fills up the space well. We have a spotlight that is constrained by a cone to be like a spotlight on stage with an actor. You can follow an element. A point light is something that you would like if you just had a light bulb in the middle of the room and it was a dark room and you just turn on one light bulb. It's just it'll light up a certain amount of space, but then fade out, toward the edges of the room. And then ambient is like if you're outside and it's a cloudy day and you just have overall uh, soft sunlight over the entire environment. Okay. And you'll see you have different types of settings for your lights. Once you add a new light layer, you'll have all these options. The best way to kind of understand those is to just kind of put one in there and adjust the options. And I'll show you the example that we did for one of the assignments coming up here in just a second. And I do recommend watching these videos as they will give you a good overall intro into how to place your lights and how to manipulate them, and lighting techniques as well. Usually we put 2 or 3 lights in a scene just to give it a more realistic look and feel. So please take a look at that. Okay. All right. So I think for the secret phrase for this week is going to be data points, because when we're creating infographics, we really want to stay away from using too much text, right? So numbers, charts, illustrations, percentages, always a great idea to replace text, okay? So the secret phrase for this week is data points. You have to have data points in your animation. It's required in the assignment, but it's going to help you make things more engaging. So anytime we can communicate message with numbers and graphics, the better off you're going to be. Okay. So using data points will help you, create color and shapes and spacing, just to better, how can I put it, make it more engaging for your audience. Okay. Looking at data on screen can be misleading if there are no visuals to represent it. Okay, so we always want to try to incorporate visuals with numbers, okay? Data points, okay? And we want to make sure that their style is consistent throughout because it's going to help the audience feel more comfortable with what they're looking at. So always making your infographics consistent. You can see these are simplified graphics, but they all have kind of the same font style, colors, that kind of thing. So you really want to start thinking about using those data points. And remember, you can animate these. Okay, we could animate the sliders going up and down. We could animate maybe the female and male flipping with our 3D. Okay, just keep that in mind as you're adding these data points. Okay, here are some things that you can add. Lines and charts. You can create those easily in Illustrator. And if you want to go grab some stock lines and charts and then manipulate them for your data points, you're more than welcome to do that. Pie charts are always really good because they're nice and they take up a nice space. You can actually create a lot of information with pie charts, and bar graphs and maps. Always a good idea because it helps people understand the geographic area, as well as bar graphs are a lot easier to read for most people than pie charts. They're just simplified information delivery methods. Okay. So I also, yeah, I would recommend watching these because they'll talk about animating bar graphs and maps, which is nice to do. You could use a linear effect to and some masks to reveal the bars, and gives it a nice interactive animated look and feel. All right. Okay. So again, the secret phrase for today will be data points. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the examples I posted. So you're going to be creating a couple things this week. Okay. So the first one is going to be this logo. You could do either one at any time, but the logo is pretty easy. You're just going to import the logo, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And then you're going to add a camera layer and a light layer to create some type of 3D animation with a light. Okay, you're going to see that here. So that's manipulated in one of the planes. I believe it's Z. And then this is manipulated in X and Y. And you can see as it zooms in and out, the light is changing in here as well. So basically you're creating a light, you're creating a 3D layer, and you're importing this logo and animating it with keyframes. Okay. And it doesn't have to be real long, just has to, fulfill the requirements of the assignment. And then the other one is this. This is the uh, next one for, I forget the name of it. I'll get back to you here in just a second. But basically, you're going to be given these data points to animate, and we need to kind of transition from one to another using 3D, using wipes, using any type of animation that you can come up with to create an animation with different types of transitions. Okay, so let's take a look at those. And let's go to content. Okay, and let's go to here. And let's take a look at logo in 3D space. So you're going to download this logo. It's an Illustrator file. All you do is just file, import. Okay, and then you're going to convert it into 3D space using the 3D toggle. Okay, and then you're just going to animate it just like we saw the example on the announcements. You will need to create an animation at this size. Okay, you can do that through the custom menu in After Effects. 3 to 5 seconds, and set the pixels to square. Okay. Be creative, add as many keyframes as you can, but you are going to want to add a light and a single animated camera layer so you can get that 3D effect. Okay, so there are some videos I posted. Let's go to announcements again here. For 3D layers, here's a video that shows you how to do that.
Mike Murphy. One logo layer is currently in 2D space. To make any layer 3D, look for the cube icon in the layers panel. If you don't see that, just right click or control click, go to columns, then check switches. Then all you need to do is just tick the box under the 3D cube icon. Now the layer is in 3D space. You will see the 3D controls in the composition window. You can click and move them around. And when you twirl open the...
So here's where you're going to get an extra index. Okay, so you got X, Y, and Z. So you're going to have a third one where you can spin it in different multiple directions. Okay, so all you got to do is turn on that 3D tab and use keyframes there. All right. Oh, let me go back here. And then this is the a tutorial on lighting.
Cone angle, so we can make
So
it a
it'll
little bit
talk
wider.
about
As you can see, I think
different cones or different settings for the lights. All right. And actually, so this is the text to animate. Let me go back to that. So this is the still to motion. Okay, now let me download this because I need to explain this. Okay, so your task here is to create an animated infographic using some of these data points. Okay, now I'm going to open this up. Now this is in Illustrator. Hopefully this will open fine. But so your job is to hold on just a sec. It's going to open up Illustrator. Let's make sure that it uploads okay. Sometimes Teams and some of these applications don't work well together. So what you're going to do is, and it says here, it says carefully read the data, blah, blah, blah. You must create 4 different related animations. You will select 4 stats or 4 rectangles at the bottom. Okay, so you can use most of these. Now, what I have usually is students use maybe those 4, okay, or maybe use these 4, or you can use those 4, okay, or you can use a combination of them. You don't have to use all of these, okay, so just keep that in mind. So you're picking 4 of these to use as an animation, and let's go back. You're going to create it at 1920 by 1080, which is broadcast standard size. Okay, it needs to be, all 4 animations need to be 12 to 20 seconds together. So what we're doing is we show each data point for 3 to 5 seconds and then transition to the next one. Okay, so if we take a look at the example, let me just kind of explain that real quick. If we look at this example, you're going to notice that, start it over. Okay, we start with the art education logo, which is nice. And then this is just a simple transition in with the data point moving into the scene. Okay. And it rotates out. That's 1 animation. So you're going to need 4 total. Okay. That's number 2, and that's just a simple rotation position transform. And there, right there was a 3D. That was 3D transition right there with a slide off. That's a 3D transition flipping in and another slide off scale. And then we had the last one that comes in, and then and then you can end your animation with the logo or whatever. If you want to add sound, please do that. That's totally up to you. You don't have to, but you can use these examples as reference to what we're doing for this, but just keep in mind that, go back to that, you don't have to use all of these. Okay, I would use this as an intro slide and then pick 4 of these to animate in and out to create transitions from one data point to the next. Okay, that's really what infographic animations are all about. Now you can add some of these other elements as well because they do make it a little more interesting, gives it a little bit more texture and layer for your process. So if we look at that one example real quick, I'll just get here real quick. If we look at the example here, you can see that they found a stock image that goes along with this assignment. And just used that same background for the animation, which is going to make it a bit more engaging. Plus, it gives it more depth. Okay, so when we're creating these animations, we want to create depth, we want to create movement, we want to create data points that are straight to the point, but that are engaging. Okay. All right. So that's good enough for this week. I'm going to have to get prepped for my upcoming meeting. Please be sure to email me if you have any questions about this. There are video examples in the modules for some of the techniques that we're using here as well. The first one with the logo animation, make sure you have at least one light and one camera and animation with that. And then for the assignment for um, uh, text to animation or data points, then we want 4 of those elements animated with transitions in between each data point. Okay, so just text me if you or email me if you have any questions on that. Coming up, you're going to be working on finalizing the solar system, and I will post a video on how to do that relatively easily in a couple different simpler moves. And you also will be starting your animated infographic for your animal. So you might want to start working on that sooner than later, just so you don't get too far behind, because it does take, once you get the elements created, then it's a little easier to start animating. And think about your storyboard as well that you created, because we want to have continuity from the beginning to the end on your animated infographic for this class for your final project. So the secret phrase is toward the middle, and make sure that you understand that data points are very important for this upcoming animation that you're going to do for your animal infographic. Okay, that's good enough for today, and we will chat with you next week.